The meeting of the Community Supervision Advisory Committee. Welcome to this a little earlier than usual schedule. I'm going to go ahead and ask Dawn to take the roll.
Good morning, everybody. Ron Anthony. Julia Tella.
Here.
Kim Britt.
Here.
Amber Brown. Actually, Amber said she would be just a little late, so I'll watch for her as she comes on. Molly Bruner. Becky Bales.
Here.
Michelle Frisbee. Kevin Glass. Tracy Green. Nicholas Henderson.
Here.
Don Lanoy.
Present.
Kelly Mitchell.
Here.
Kurt Mortensen.
Here.
Rebecca Muscat.
Here.
John Priam.
Here.
John Shiro is not going to be with us today. Lane Sutherland.
Here.
And Jennifer Verdea.
Here.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Fantastic. And Barb Weckman-Brecky. Okay, we do have a quorum.
All right, good to hear. So as you might have heard, I have a bit of sad news and a bit of good news, and then we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Sad news is Jake McClellan, who was one of our DOC reps, has taken a position with Anoka County. So he's no longer working for DOC, and he will not be at the meeting today. And we are extremely sad to see him go. But we'll have a new DOC rep at our next meeting. We have a new member today, Judge Verdea. So would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Jennifer Verdea. I am a judge in the 2nd District, Ramsey County, and I've been a judge since last September. So fairly new to the bench, but prior to that, I was a prosecutor for a number of years, spent some time in Ramsey County as a managing attorney, also as a trial attorney and a member of the Minnesota Human Trafficking Task Force. I also was a prosecutor in Anoka County for about 11 years. And then prior to that, I was a community corrections agent in Ramsey County, also in adult and juvenile divisions.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We're
you for
really
having me.
excited to have you joining us. So we've definitely been looking for the judicial perspective on some of these issues.
Thank you.
So that I think rounds out, I think we're still waiting on one judicial appointment, and then now we have judge, prosecutor, and defense representation on the committee. So that's exciting. All right. Welcome to the committee. Next item on the agenda real quick is approval of the minutes and the agenda. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from July 23rd.
There are no corrections. I will so move.
All right, Kurt Mortensen makes that motion. Do we have a second?
Nick Henderson, I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that.
Okay, Julia Tella.
Yay.
Kim Britt. Molly Bruner. Becky Bales.
Aye.
Kevin Glass.
Aye.
Nicholas Henderson.
Aye.
Don Lanoy.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Yes.
Kurt Mortensen.
Aye.
Becca Muscat.
Aye.
John Prian,
Aye.
Lane Sutherland, and Jennifer Redea.
Aye, I reviewed them.
Okay,
All right, with that, the motion is approved unanimously. Just going to recognize that we also have one more member joining us, Barb Weckman-Brockby, for the record. Okay, Molly, hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you all. We are going to move on to agenda item number 3. So these are previously presented policy drafts. We have 2 of them here. So we will start with the first one there, the training coaching QA policy. And we were able to bring it back to MACAC and discuss this policy. We do have Kevin here identified. I just want to pause for a moment because I don't know, Kevin, if you ended up getting written feedback, if you have more to say or present on the policy before maybe we get into an open conversation.
Of some of the updates that we did, and is that what you're talking about? Or?
Right. So we had the policy that's attached to the agenda, the one that we reviewed last month. And so just wondering if there's any updates since then, or are we still referring to the original policy reviewed last month?
Oh, I thought the updated one was attached or sent out.
The one that, okay, now I'm getting myself confused. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, the policy that's attached to this month's agenda that was sent by Don. That's the one I'm referring to.
Yeah, that should be our most up-to-date policy with the updated definitions.
Got it.
Kevin, I think
Do
that
we
what
want-
Molly's asking, is there anything that you want to highlight for CSAC that may have changed since last month?
Yes.
More beautifully put, and then I was going to ask Don to share and you are. So thank you for helping me figure out why I couldn't articulate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So we presented last month at CSAC and brought it back to EBP with some of the suggestions and heard feedback from MACAC, MACPO, DOC as well. And one of the biggest ones was for the definitions that we should be aligned with the other definitions that are being proposed or already in place in policies. And so we went through our definitions and spoke with other members that are other groups that are working on other deliverables that have definitions to match ours up with theirs and vice versa. And so I believe we are now on the same page and have the same definitions listed. So we did update some definitions, some minor tweaks and changes just to language or took out a word here or there. We did add, you want to scroll down a little bit, Don, please. So yep, case plan and case planning, some updates were done to those. I think EBP coaching model, a couple tweaks to that one as well. And then a new one. Oh. Or maybe we put up at the top, I'm sorry. Cognitive behavior intervention, or
There it is.
okay. I think that might have been updated as well. And then for the rest of the body, the procedures, A, B, C, and D, no changes were made. One suggestion was made for on C under procedures. All agencies must provide integrated EBP coaching with staff to ensure consistent application and support development. And so one of the suggestions was that to add supervisors to that, but it's kind of implied that those are included in that as well, if they meet those qualifications to be a coach for the agency. So we didn't want to define or add in supervisors in that section. And And then the other, probably the biggest thing or most confusing of the last one, we had the implementation plan. And so that was just a guide if agencies wanted to take it to the next level to add more EBP or how they could go about getting it. We decided to take that out of the policy and have it available for agencies to access. And we'll send out where that's going to be housed and located. But we just removed it from the policy and kept those separate. So those are the biggest changes that the EBP work group made, and then at our last EBP large meeting, we voted on it, and we have membership from CPO, so MACPO, CCA, MACAC, DOC, Tribal Nation, Justice Involved, and so we voted on that, and the EBP statewide advisory committee voted to push this through, or this is our recommendation to CSAC to move forward.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So I will now open it up for others' comments or feedback. Or questions or anything. And Kelly, if you have to translate again, let me know, because I can say from a MACX perspective, so I'm glad that document, that supplemental document you just referred to, Kevin, was taken out, but still used as a tool. I think we all see the importance of the EBP Advisory Committee providing that menu of options and giving guidance for that, because again, this is a group of folks deeply vetted in all of this work. And so as long as it wasn't like you must, or it was that attachment piece to it, that works well, I know, from the MACAC director's perspective. I think the other thing we talked about was making sure that when we talked about core correctional practices, that we are using the lowercase c, not the proper like University of Cincinnati curricula. Like there could be other options there. But as I looked at that, the definition is clear that it's broad. It's not specifying a curriculum or curricula. So I think that lands fine as well. Becky, again, jump in if you heard something different there.
I completely agree. And I think, like you said, I really like that guide, the implementation guide. It was just sometimes when I was reading the wording, it was kind of thou shalt do that instead of it's more of a guide. And so that was really, I think, one of the only sticking points.
I'll just offer from the DOC perspective, like all of the above was also true. We really support this policy and totally agree that the implementation plan was really more of a guide for any agency that might need some help in getting started with that. So we liked it.
Thank you. I should say we did have a question on the approval, and the decision was to, if this is voted on, we know it will go to the DOC policy unit. And so we weren't sure of the approval. If you look at it, so we have evidence-based practices, statewide advisory committee, community supervision advisory committee, and the commissioner of corrections. And some policies just have commissioner of corrections, some kind of lay out all the work groups that worked on it. And so we left it as is and figured the DOC policy unit would make the appropriate changes if they needed to be changed.
That's a really good question, Kevin. So thanks for raising it. I think I have a feeling that it might only need to be Commissioner of Corrections since that's where the policy is issued from, but I will track that. I will confirm that with the policy team, before this gets posted.
Thank you.
For others, thoughts, comments? Okay. Well, we are at a position here then that I'm not hearing, I'm hearing alignment with this particular policy. The definitions, I appreciate that they were lined up. It is an interesting, Kelly, I mean, I think that well, they all have to go through, I know your DOC legal, which may not happen for a while. As we work on the next few months of these core policies being approved, I don't know, I was just like making sure that we almost keep these definitions in some sort of dictionary, right? Because the next policy that comes up, we just want to make sure, I guess, all of that aligns and that something doesn't shift from a different committee's perspective. But so far, so good at the moment, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I can say that our policy team does do a final review because we have a lot of policies that have the same thing being defined in them across multiple policies. So they do a review to make sure that those definitions align or to try to bring it into alignment if they don't. But I definitely was going to flag for them that we need to, since these are all new, we need to make sure that when they are enacted, they're all the same.
Perfect. Well, with that said, without hearing a reason that anybody's saying that they have to go back to their respective organizations or any place else related to this committee, I believe that we can do a roll call and a vote on this one.
So I think you're looking for a motion.
If we're looking for a motion to approve, or yes, a motion to approve and then a second for this, then we can do that.
I would make a motion.
Thanks, Kevin. Do I have a second?
Julie.
Thank you, Julie. All right. Any further discussion? Now, with that said, we can do a roll call. Promise by the end of this meeting, I'll get back on it here. I'm at a conference, so I think I'm a little like all over the place here, so I apologize.
Okay, Julia Tella,
Aye.
Kim Britt,
Aye.
Molly Bruner,
Okay.
Becky Bales,
Aye.
Michelle Frisbee,
Aye.
Kevin Glass,
Aye.
Tracy Green,
Aye.
Phyllis Henderson,
Aye.
Don Lanoy,
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell,
Yes.
Kurt Mortensen,
Aye.
Rebecca Muscat,
Aye.
John Priam,
Aye.
Lane Sutherland,
Aye.
Jennifer Verdea,
Aye.
Barb Weckman Brecky,
Aye.
and that's a unanimous vote.
With that, everyone, moving right along. That's exciting. All right, so we will move on now to the second policy that was reviewed last month as well, the case planning policy. I do see on our agenda, John Marsalic. I think maybe there's, right? I'm looking at the attendees now. John is here, so can we move him up? And I don't know, is this also something Rhonda might be part of? Good morning, John.
I've moved both of them up to panelists.
All right. Good morning, you two. So I will ask now, hopefully a better question than I did with Kevin, but we have the agenda or the policy posted on this for this meeting. And so would you like to go through any updates, changes, things that have happened in the last month related to this one?
Rhonda's here as well, right? Yes.
Yep, we have you both here. So either one of you, however.
Yeah, I can get us started here. So yeah, since the last meeting, the JRI Phase 2 group did meet, and there was also additional feedback that was received through the DOC from Tracy. So this action item, this policy that I submitted to Dawn does have additional changes that were made within the policy itself. And so I'm not sure how you would like to proceed today as far as, if there's any action you'd like to take, but just with looking into some of the changes within the policy, I'm gonna look on my screen, and then I think I'm gonna have you probably scroll through so we can make sure we're all looking into the same items here. There was a definition added at the bottom of page 1 in regards to interventions. And even looking at the one that you guys are pulling up there, some of this, even in comparison to mine, doesn't look exactly to be jiving, but keep scrolling then so we can get to the interventions definition. So this isn't showing the one that has the interventions definition contained in it, I don't think.
It's in there. It's just formatted differently. Sorry.
Is it? Okay.
Which section is it?
It's bottom of page 1. It just doesn't have folder.
Right under.
Oh, sure.
Oh, right there.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. So we've got a definition for interventions that was added here as part of this policy. There were some additional changes. We can go into page 2. Responsivity. Now that looks to be similar. That was changed later in the policy. So getting into the key components, this is an area where there may be some discussion needed. So coming out of the JRI Phase 2 meeting, there was some language added here that talks about agencies must develop a plan to include capacity to case plan with medium risk clients within 2 years of policy effective date. I wasn't at the JRI Phase 2 meeting. I know that there's been some questions about the time frame being contained within a policy of 2 years with effective date for medium risk clients. So previous language was more, I would say, broad and ambiguous, and I think there's some concerns about putting a time frame of 2 years into the policy. So I adopted the language change and submitted this to the JRI Phase 2 group, but I think this is I'm not going to say a sticking point, but I think there's questions. We're putting into policy a time frame of when something's to be effective. Now, on the flip side of that, I think within the commissioner's responses and some of the other language, it does articulate some timelines for getting some of these things put in place. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be language that gets us to where we're expected to be, but at the same time, you're in policy writing, do we want to contain language that is saying where we need to be or are expected to be as far as the medium risk clients being at a 2-year time frame? So open any thoughts, comments from anybody at that juncture.
Well, I guess, agree. I mean, both John and I are obviously carrying the MACAT voice here, but I think not just this point, but several others, this is substantially changed since last month. So it just is a general thing. We need these to go back to our respective organizations for further discussion. To your point here, John, that we must do it is different than have a plan on how to do it. And we talk about that in light of full funding not being here too. So to have us must do something that could exceed our capacity to do it, and it's not just a plan that is like a major change, right? And I think that that's important that we're not carrying this forward at this moment.
Well, and I'll just say, for discussion, one of the things that we've talked about is that the idea of planning, case planning around medium risk and the capacity to do that, previous conversations about that coinciding with the validation of the LSCMI. And how, are we doing these two things side by side, or is it going to be intentional to try to get to the capacity with medium risk as we validate the LSCMI? So that's where I feel like you kind of put yourself into a situation where I worry about wanting to push ahead, to make that plan when we still want to, at least the discussions I've been a part of with, all the delivery systems have been, well, this should go alongside of the validation of the LSCMI.
Again, I'm a MACAC voice too, so it's nice we all agree, but Molly and John and I completely agree. I think that it's really an arbitrary time frame, the 2 years, and then to say must. I just don't think it's the right decision right now. There's too many unknowns. So I'm against that language at this time.
The important thing you're bringing up too is, and we know this, like the case planning policy, the training one, and the risk assessment especially are so interdependent, right? We're writing them separately, but they're obviously they are joined together in how we do this work. And so the point of the validation, what's high, medium, low, what are the cut points, what are all of these things? And then overlay that on our respective delivery systems. And then what does that actually mean is really important to this particular policy, and not necessarily what a case plan looks like on, the principles around it, just on the ability to, to do it and with how many people, right? And so it is a little bit maybe of a chicken and an egg thing too, with some of these, like in what order are we rolling these through? Do we wait for the risk assessment to get to the point of, approval and then do this one? I don't know. I mean, I think that's an important question that we should kind of grapple with.
I would jump in and say 2 years is a long time. I feel like we should be able to get this done within that amount of time. At DOC, we're already doing it, so actually it's not going to be a lift for us, but I feel like all agencies should be able to get there with the 2-year lead time. And we did discuss that medium is whatever it is for you right now. And the LCMI might change that. The LCMI validation might change that, but you have a caseload today that is medium risk, and you could be moving towards getting your agents to case plan on those cases right now. And I understand that there's a lot of competing pressures that all of our systems are under, but at some point we have to just start doing this and start making these things happen. And so I don't think it's aggressive at all. I actually think the commissioner would rather it be 1 year. If this group is recommending 2 years, then that's great. We can put that forward, but I really do not think we should back down from getting to case planning on medium risk cases.
I think for me, a sticking point is, what are we defining that as then? Because if the DOC is case planning to medium risk, what is that cut point right now? Because in my county, that cut point would be somebody scoring an 11 on an LSCMI. And that's where the capacity is going to stick. And that's where it's not going to be feasible. And that's where, putting a timeline of, the 2 years, I like 2 years. I mean, that's fine. It's longer than what, you think the commissioner may want. But I still struggle with, I feel like we still haven't resolved the idea of what that medium truly means. And that's where I go back to the validation. And if we had this consistent message of the medium looks like this, then I think it would be maybe easier for us all to be kind of consistent on the same page for where we want to go with the timeline and the expectation of. If we said a medium was a 21 on the LSCMI, I would say, well, sure, I think we could definitely try to figure something out like that in 2 years. But in my shop, in my county, it's an 11. And so that's where I get stuck in this topic.
I think Barb also indicated she wanted to talk here, and sorry to take over, Molly, but Barb's here, and then probably Kevin.
I can't see the room very well either, so that's great. Thanks for the help.
Yeah.
So we can do Barb and then Kevin.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess we've had some talk with AMC Connections and folks, Kurt and Ron and I on this committee. And I don't think it's per se this particular I understand we should get done in 1 year, but we know how fast 1 year goes by with emergencies and things we have to do. I can't imagine making the time frame less. And we just do have trepidation because it's each thing, of course, is increasing the cost of everything we do and the amount of training. Without that full funding and those pressures on us, I think we just need to be careful not to set us up for failure here. And so I want to be conscious of that as there could be some interpretation here about, develop a plan to include, capacity. Well, if that capacity, you could have the plan, the capacity is not there, what does that mean? So I just have a little trepidation about this language. And I don't know, Kurt and Ron, we've talked about this a little bit, but I know Kevin's in line too.
Madam Chair, a comment, but it looks like Kevin is.
So Kurt is
Hesitant.
raising his hand
You
too.
can go ahead. You can go before me.
We're probably like a similar.
I mean, is there an option where this could be assessed in 1 year as to whether another year is a realistic time frame for implementation, or is that just kicking the can down the road? I just raised that for discussion.
Of course, I mean, we can make whatever recommendation we think is appropriate for the timeline. I think we're all just voicing our opinions at this stage about what might be appropriate. Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped off. I don't know if it's the internet here or not. So I got the first part. Commissioner Weckman-Brecky didn't hear the last part of what you said. I know you said you were working with AMC, and I was wondering, sorry, I really want to hear the rest of that statement, if that's okay.
Thanks, Molly. I think Kurt and Ron and I have been talking about with Emilio, just really concerned about the capacity of smaller agencies to meet all these requirements. And so it wasn't per se about this one recommendation, but I think in total, and you brought that up a few minutes ago about funding and figuring out where that's going to be. And I just want to be careful that we don't do all this good work and set us up for failure, set us up for, we know there's been times where there's agencies could just be like, hands up, back to DOC. And that's not what we want. That's not our goal here. So I just want to be conscious of that as we get to these final recommendations, that we're thinking about what that true cost is. And if it's just feasible, I mean, we need to get here, but how do we get there and how much time do we allow agencies to get there?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I would agree, whether it's a year or 2 years, I think that, I guess I would respectfully disagree, Kelly, on the, that we all do it on mediums, or we might all have medium caseloads according to our current cut points, but they're not necessarily consistent across the state. So the example that I would like very easily use is, again, in Scott County, until we had the recent funding, we had a lot of what you and many other jurisdictions around this state would have considered medium and even high in our PSC, because we did not have the funding for me to have enough field agents to do that work. And so we have, level set quite a bit. So I'm really excited about that. But until I see the results, or a lot of other jurisdictions that may be struggling in the same area, it's exactly what John said. It depends on what that is. Now, if that policy comes out and we're able to set our own supervision standards, so we say, okay, in 11, we all agree in 11 is medium, but in Scott, I can't supervise them at the level that I would like to at the moment because I don't have full funding. I need 3 more POs to pull that off. And so until we get that full funding and I can go to the board and ask for those 3 positions, then I'd be happy to do medium risk case planning. If I don't get that and we continue to see a decrease, or, there's just not a right setting of that, then I'm going to be in a place where my caseloads will be extraordinary, high, and I won't be able to do it. And not because of a lack of desire or because of what's right. And then you can scale that up to a Hennepin or Ramsey. So until all of us really see this, I don't know that we can say for certainty that we can really do good case planning on all medium risk clients. I think having a plan in place or recommendations on what that looks like in 2 years is absolutely reasonable. But I think it's you must do it without that additional information that I'm struggling with.
Kevin, did you want to go?
He's been so patient.
You have, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna basically Molly and the commissioners and John kind of touched on everything that I was gonna say. And the biggest thing is I agree 100% what John said about the cut points as well. So that's where I think the biggest thing is, because we keep saying very high, and medium. Well, it's not consistent across the state of what that looks like. So EBP, we should be consistent. And so one agency is supervising them as a high. So say they transfer to another agency and they're a medium, right? It's not consistent. So we're working on that with the validation study. But if the push is to do case planning on mediums, let's have, the cut points that were all the same. So right now, for example, in Itasca County, if you said do them on mediums, they'd be 12 to 19. Well, that's not consistent with the DOC. Now, if you said, okay, do it at 20, all right, we're already doing that because that's our high. So we can do that. So I think if we really want to, if the push is to do them on mediums, then we need to figure out what that cut point is. Because just saying medium, that's where I think things are getting out of line and not best practices. So I just want to be best practices on this and not just push something through to push it through, where we can all be in support of and all agencies can process it, especially when there's financial back on the counties or state for staffing numbers to supervise, because that may be an increase of what that looks like as well. So, and budgets, we all know budgets are really, really tight this year. And I don't know what next year is going to bring, but I know this year it's tight. So I want to be very careful of trying to push something through that we're not ready to push through. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Ron.
Was it
Hackett.
Ron?
I apologize for getting on video late. I was able to listen at least from the beginning. But anyway, from a commissioner or from a person that isn't in the weeds of this thing, it sounds a little concerning to me that we're putting the cart before the horse when we don't even have a standard level amongst agencies. How can we make final decisions on a timeline or even some strategic planning of case planning without being on the same how do I use it? Same level of designation for what a risk level is. I'm a little bit confused here at this point.
Thank you. Well, I think that's, it is back to maybe it's a sequential order of how things are, being worked on and different things like that. So a valid question and point as well.
The point that that I'd like to just make though is, like, we do all have to remember that we did receive increased funding. It may not be the total amount that our new funding formula calls for, but we did get more money, and the legislature does have a valid point in expecting some return for that investment. And so whatever we do, we have to be cognizant of that there has to be at least a minimum amount of progress that we are making and that we are showing. So it doesn't have to, sure, maybe this isn't the policy that we push on, but we have to get these policies in place, and we have to start doing risk, needs, and responsivity the way that we said that we would. And so there are potential incremental steps, and I hear you. I hear all of you when you're saying it's not the time. But you know what? There's like 20 things we have to change, and we can't change them all overnight. So we are working on the LSC My Validation, and we're going to get standardized cutoff points. But that doesn't mean that we can't do some case planning in the meantime, that we can't require people to do that risk assessment up front, whatever it shows, in the meantime, and start getting the building blocks in place so that when those cut points come through, we're actually like a step ahead, and we're in a position to be like, okay, how do we shift now to understand that these are the caseloads that we have under those cut points? We know how to do the work. Now we have to shift it a little bit more, right, to get to those standardized cut points. That's going to be a lift for all of us, and I totally get that. But I don't think that means that we don't move forward. So that's all I'm saying, is we've got to find that middle ground where there is some movement. And if it means we can't move all the way tomorrow, what's the recommendation for when we do that? We need a solid recommendation, and we need a deadline. Everybody works better with a deadline. So what is it that we're recommending that deadline should be? That's what I would say.
Thanks,
I
Kelly.
think sorry, I just want to jump in. I think there's a couple things that have the progress we've made so far. We needed to get on the same page with definitions. We weren't even on the same page with definitions. And so some of these things, yes, they are taking more time than we had anticipated because we are seeing unforeseen topics come up along the way where we're looking at each other and we're like, well, we're not even defining this the same way. And I will say, again, I feel the same way about the cut points. Unless we can figure out what our cut points look like, we're not going to be on the same page. Once that is, and I agree with you, Kelly, like we have to move forward. So I'm ecstatic about the progress we've made on this policy. And this is very good discussion about where we're at and where we need to be, because we definitely weren't here 3 months ago. Like we're at the point now where we're discussing in depth about the things that are the true sticking points. And so I'm very confident we're going to be able to figure it out. And yes, I agree. We need to kind of hold our feet to the fire to get this stuff because that's the expectation of us. So now that we know, okay, here's our major sticking points. I mean, I can go back to our group and say, we have to flesh this out now that we got an understanding of where we think we need to be. And what does that definition look like? And where can we, again, like you said, Kelly, it's got to be, we have to meet somewhere. There's got to be the middle ground where we can all say we are comfortable with moving ahead in this direction with this expectation. So, but I think, where we were in comparison to where we are, we hit some roadblocks along the way of some things where just like, oh, well, this is not even on the same page as far as definitions and use of consistent language within the policies as they looked side by side with some of these policies right now.
Thanks, John. And I agree with you too, Kelly. MACAC was ready to vote yes on the case planning policy as presented last month. So there's by no means not a desire to get that moving, but in that prior language, it was to have a plan on the medium risk and to start with the high and very high. And so I agree with you. We have to start somewhere and do something. And it seemed to me, and you haven't even gotten there yet, John, but there's other parts of this policy that the behavior response subcommittee, I believe, came in and did edits to this case planning. So one thing that we are working out is trying to come up with a process and infographic about how these policies are going through all the subcommittees, who reports to who's approving, how does it come to CSAC? Because when it was brought last month, it was, I believe, right, John, correct me if I'm wrong, you're on the case planning subcommittee, JRI had reviewed it, and then it came to us. And then behavior response, assumed, I think, that we'll listen to them later, but that the memo, was okay, and then put some more language into the case planning policy. Well, then that's where we're at today, which is to have a conversation about the additional changes and information in there, which does shift it, right? Like we were ready to approve and now we can't, given that we haven't had this discussion here or obviously with our respective organizations.
Correct. You want me to keep going?
I think it'd be good if you would cover the other changes that are in the policy. That'd be great.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Just moving into, there's a small change within, thanks, Don. B, right in the middle of the screen there, agencies and agents. The language had previously been, sorry, I'm just bringing up my other one here again. Initial and ongoing processes such as, and now it's that include, again, these are small changes, but there are changes that were made between last month's CSAC meeting and this month's CSAC meeting. So I just am making sure that we're drawing attention to some of these language changes that may stick out as part of this policy. I believe we can scroll on to page 3. There were some changes that were provided within some of the language within C and D. Nothing, I would say, that drew a lot of attention or was very significant. Going into a lot of it, again, I'll just say a lot of this is wordsmithing. People are wordsmithing at this point. And so after last month's meeting, There was feedback from, I think, the EBP team with the DOC, and a couple others as well had submitted additional language. And this is where things are getting, I will say, a little confusing at times, because like you said, you had a policy last month that was kind of done, but then it was, people were still looking at it and making suggested changes. So into alignment with the R&R Model E, there's just some language changes within there that removed language that was defining general and specific responsivity, and adding some language around the risk principle was added in as well. Okay, so getting into F, responding to client behavior. So this is where, after the last meeting, there was a desire to work with the group from the behavior response grid and incorporate some language into the case planning policy here. So I looked at the language, and I guess my only comment, or if people have comments as well, it's, we're trying to be as broad as possible and step back as much as we can when we're, writing this policy. There's a lot of language that was incorporated into this policy from the behavior response grid that was added in here. And so you have language around responses to client behavior, including interventions, incentives, sanctions is included in there if you continue to scroll down as well, and evaluation. So this is probably one of the largest areas of change from last month's policy to the language that you're seeing incorporated into the policy as it is presented today. And again, this is something that was feedback that was provided as part of the last CSAC meeting. And so going back, there was a small group that met with people from the behavior response grid group as well. And this also then became further incorporated, I think, coming out of our JRI phase 2 meeting from a couple weeks ago. So this is additional added language there that you have responding to client behavior. Open for any thoughts or comments.
Thanks, John. What thoughts and comments do folks have?
Madam Chair, it's Barb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You all understand this probably better than those of us who aren't in the work, but so many of these requirements depend on CSTS. Is it ready? I mean, like we're putting in these requirements of evaluation, assessment and evaluation, and that, the technology is necessary for that to work, to not be too labor intensive. Where's that at? Can you give us just a quick summary?
I am not on one of those subgroups, so I don't know if somebody is in this group can better answer that. I can give you what I think it is, but I may be off. I don't know if Kelly, you had a better. I have somebody in my office on the CSTS executive committee. So the last time I got an update, which was pretty recently, is work being done on the module. There is a subcommittee of people that are working on building out. Now, I think there are some questions about, I guess, timing, what exactly is all going to be in there. Will it be flexible enough to accept if people are using different curricula than the statewide one? It sounds like it will. People, that's what's being reported. But I personally haven't seen any demos or things of the most recent version. So I think there are some question marks. I think this whole section, I guess, from MAC, it just echoes what we said before. It's a substantially different. I don't know that we've made that's going to be one of the next agenda items coming up, is talking about the behavior response memo. There's an assumption here that there's like kind of a vote or an agreement that we aren't going to have one. I know it's a recommendation, but we didn't really formally say one way or the other. So that's one thing that came back from MACAC. I think that it gets very in the weeds on some of this stuff. And are we all in agreement that this is the way that all of Minnesota will do that? I don't know. You ask an excellent question, Commissioner, about even the capacity of CSTS and our ability to do this. So it might be putting, again, the cart before the horse on this much language in this particular policy. The only last thing I would say is I really did try to look at those definitions that you said were aligned. I noticed, so I just want to make sure that even the last policy we just voted on, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the cognitive behavioral intervention definition is substantially different now between the two. So if that's true, then we aren't in alignment. So we have maybe a bigger problem than we thought. I think this one has more detail in it than the one we just voted on.
I'll have to try to look at them side by side, but
Yeah, very different.
you may be right. And I'll just say about the language that's included here, if others have comments, that'd be great. But it does include, you know, the broad scoping language of including but not limited to. You know, examples include but are not limited to. And that's where I really want to continue to see us push that direction of policy language, because I think one of the things I was pointing out earlier in language, it at times limits us. And I don't want to limit the ability for counties to also, you know, think outside the box, and what interventions may look like in one county may not be able to look the same in another county. Examples of this is that, I think, Molly, you don't have STS in Scott County, right? And so, you know, just being broad in that definition. And I do, when I look at this language, I do believe that it is broad enough. You know, so tangible examples, things such as gift cards, you know, and so you have that ability to still maintain, you know, the right to go and think outside the box and come up with different things that work for your jurisdiction. And that's, you know, what we want to continue to see. So.
I'm actually wondering if the next move here is to ask GRI2 to work on the responding to client behavior section a bit more. When I look at F1, it's a really big, long paragraph. It really doesn't feel like policy to me the way it's written right now. There's a lot of stuff there, and I feel like we haven't quite honed in on what it is that we're really asking agents to do. I like the idea of including in the case planning policy something that gives some direction of our expectations in how responses to client behavior will go, that we are wanting to promote incentivizing good behavior, using appropriate scalable sanctions when necessary. I mean, I feel like there's like really good concepts here, but I don't know that it's refined yet enough for this group to vote on it. And, you know, I think I came into this meeting thinking like, let's send it back to the organizations for some work, but I actually wonder if sending it back to JRI2 for a bit more work is the better call here at this today. And I will, one more thing I forgot before I forget, actually, I'm not sure if evaluation is appropriate in this policy for this piece of it, because this is really like when you're case planning, how should you be interacting with a client? What are some of those expectations in the work that the agent is doing? That's not a tangible thing that can be evaluated in the same way that like a program can be evaluated. And so I'm not sure if there should be a policy level expectation for that in this here. There are other places where I think we should be making sure we say evaluate, do Q&A and all that stuff, but I'm not sure if this is the place to have that.
I agree. I would like to make it a little more brief. I know there was some feedback that it shouldn't be in the policy at all. I will say that. But I think we can, the evaluation point I think is very good, because if you look further down in the policy, there is some language around evaluation as it relates to this policy of case planning. So I think it may not be a good fit to have a section on evaluation in relation to the responding to client behavior portion, because like you say, this is just, you know, trying to embed something into case planning itself. So I think we can definitely take some of that language back to the phase 2 group to have a conversation.
I agree too. I think that's an excellent recommendation, Kelly, and thanks, John, for being willing to take another stab at it with the groups. But other comments or questions? Agree, disagree?
This is Tracy Green. Sorry, I came in a late. I was listening earlier. And I was prepared to make comments at the next section when we talk about the behavior modification memo that came out, but I can bring it up now. And I just think that in some of the trainings I've been to, we stress that we really need to make these individualized to your jurisdictions, and that we should be really setting sanctions and incentives based on individual county availability and resources. And I just was listening to a presenter who really encouraged that we set these in our jurisdictions with our judges and our county attorneys so that we're all on board, because we can say we want to give these incentives, but if you don't have the bench or you don't have the attorneys behind you, they're never going to fly. So that being careful that we don't limit ourselves, and we make sure that we empower counties to do this at jurisdiction levels, so that we make sure that they get enforced and that the resources are there.
Thank you very much.
Moving ahead.
I unless I hear anything else, I think the action item is that we are moving this back to JRI 2 for further work, and we look forward to seeing what you bring back, John. So then I think I'm kicking it over to you, Kelly. Is that correct?
Sure. If you say so. No, I'm just kidding.
I can keep going. I was looking at our agenda.
I got it. Okay. So those were the policies that had previously come before us. Next on our agenda, we want to take up some new, we need to do direction on previous recommendations. So let's move to the behavior response grid. It looks like John and Rhonda, you might actually still be on deck for that, or is that incorrect?
Yes, but I guess I would just say, like, I believe, I mean, it is, I don't have anything additional in that regard, other than I believe the behavior response grid memo, there were no additional changes from last month to this month. So it is still a standing document. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rhonda. I believe everything is status quo, and I guess it is just up to the group as to next steps with that.
Rhonda, do you have
Agreed. It
anything
was
else?
sent back just to the case planning policy to integrate it, and what was left at that. We haven't heard anything else.
Okay, so just to square us up, originally there was the potential to have a policy for a recommendation for development of a standardized statewide behavior response grid. The recommendation that you all brought back was we need to incorporate these concepts into how we work with individuals on supervision, but not necessarily have one grid that everybody has to use. And so then in the course of our last meeting, we talked about incorporating those concepts into the case planning policy. So I think the reason it's on the agenda today is just to confirm with CSAC that direction is the direction that we want to go with this, or is there anything different that members want to consider? On this one, I might take silence as acquiescence. Okay, I've seen some head nods. So we won't need to do a vote on that, I don't think. So we have asked JRI2 to continue to work on building those concepts into the case planning policy. So we will bring that back, and we'll continue to have discussion on that as we move forward. All right. The second item that we had talked about in the past was development of a pre-screener. And I'm not sure if Tessa Nelson has joined us today.
No, she could not make it. So her and I spoke yesterday. I was at the meeting, so I can give some updates or kind of move stuff forward.
Perfect. Do you want to go ahead and set the stage and provide that update?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the presentation was done at this group on the, the Minnesota pre-screener. And as a brief reminder, it was, because I was on that subcommittee with several other, everybody from the 3 delivery systems. Julie Rude from Hennepin was chairing that particular subcommittee. And we did talk about this also like at MACAC. And so we want to hear obviously from others if there's a change. We as MACAC really support this idea that, that we're using a validated tool that does exist nationally. There are some specific recommendations, like for instance, not using arrest data, but using, conviction data instead, right? That we are wanting to move forward to build off of something that exists, but then also to modify that and validate it for Minnesota so that we have something that hopefully is automated, that's in CSTS, that everybody can use, right? And that it's really tied into the LSCMI, should we do a full one or not, right? And so that whole concept, all of those principles need to be embedded in that. And so I know MACAC was wanting to move forward with this idea. I know that the risk assessment group, of course, was moved that forward. John Marcelic, I'll pause. I think that JRI 2 is in favor and supportive of this. Please correct me if that's not correct. I think right now this does require though resources specifically from the Department of Corrections. And I know Hennepin and maybe even Ramsey, I don't want to speak for anybody, but there was hope that maybe people could be like on a subcommittee or review committee. And so because we're asking for that, and it is a resource to use the data and evaluation folks, especially from DOC, to do this, I know that what we didn't do, and I don't, again, does it need a vote or not, Kelly, you tell me, to basically make a formal request to the commissioner saying that this is what we'd like to see happen in this space. And, is there a capacity then to take the information from this subcommittee and move that forward and do some research and analysis on it?
All right, and I can confirm that DOC is willing to put those resources towards development of the pre-screener. And I think that you're right, it was the other counties also, we needed to know if they were able to also participate on the subcommittee and put their resources towards development of it, but we are on board on the DOC side.
Okay, so I think Julie Ruth, the chair of this, was just looking for, she was going to move forward and, again, request membership and maybe reach out to whoever, sorry, I don't know the name of who I guess is in charge of that particular department, Kelly, in your shop, but to start the process of getting a group together to be able to walk through this information and maybe start that process. And so I don't know if it really needs a formal vote, but just wanted to make sure we're all in alignment with that process.
Yeah, so I think that what we could do is we could actually just have the chairs send a message to with CSAC's desire to go ahead and move forward with this. Do we want to do a formal vote that's our recommendation, or how do people feel on that one? Process-wise?
I don't think it would hurt. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's not going to hurt to take a vote.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just do a vote. So I'll entertain a motion to move forward a recommendation that we develop a pre-screener within Minnesota, and that DOC and the other counties with research staff dedicate some resources to the development of that pre-screener.
I will make that motion.
Okay, so Tracy Green makes that motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Barb Workman Brecky.
Second by Barb.
Can't even say
Any
my full name.
discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Whenever you're ready, Don.
Ron Anthony,
Aye.
Julia Tella,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Kim Britt, Amber Brown, Amber, are you still on? Molly Bruner?
Yes, I am. I'm still here.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. Just now getting settled in the house. Sorry.
Molly Bruner,
Aye.
Becky Bales,
Aye.
Michelle Frisbee,
Aye.
Kevin Glass,
Aye.
Tracy Green,
Aye.
Nicholas Henderson.
Aye.
John Lanoy,
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell,
Yes.
Kurt Mortensen,
Aye.
Becca Muscat,
Aye.
John Priam,
Aye.
Lane Sutherland,
Aye.
Jennifer Verdea,
Aye.
and Barb Weckman Brecky.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote.
All right, with that, the motion is approved. I think we're back to you, Molly.
All right, sounds good. So moving on to number 5 on the agenda, new draft policy review. These are here today to discuss for the first time. And so I don't have a person identified on the IPV policy. Is there someone that, maybe Tracy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, if you
And
want
then
to, okay.
Oh, Tracy, I will elevate Tim and Liz as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Tracy Green, representing MACPO. I am the director of Wabasha County Probation, and I have been on the Domestic Violence Steering Committee since its inception a couple years ago. So just a couple people will be joining us here today. One is Tim Schrammel. Tim is with Steele County, and he's representing CCA, and also Liz Richards. So the two of them, there's Tim. Good. So they'll be jumping in. I said I'll kind of take the lead because I had planned to be here, although I didn't plan on being here late. I would take the lead on this, and then Tim and Liz could jump in as they saw fit. So just to give a little history, and for some of those that are kind of new on the committee, back in May of 2024, the Domestic Violence Steering Committee had submitted the IPV, which is Intimate Partner Violence Reunification Principles. And there was some statewide training that went on. I know throughout the state, and I know that there's a couple coming up yet, and I know that they're also going to be doing a virtual training that's coming up, so that they're still trying to get trained statewide on what we had identified as the IPV reunification principles. So those were brought back, and if I remember correctly, approved by CSAC, and then they were sent to the Commissioner of Corrections. And the Commissioner of Corrections approved those, supported those, and then directed that CSAC create policy related to the IPV principles. So the original document of the IPV principles, again, was approved back in May of 2024. And it's several documents which kind of outline what the principles are and how they should be used in supervision. And really the concept is it's really a victim-centered approach on when we're working with victims and reunification in the process. Does anyone have any questions before I move forward on those IPV reunification principles? Okay, so then moving forward, and what the Commissioner of Corrections response was, because I think it just kind of articulates what our mission is here, is he indicated, I fully support CSAC's recommendation and will direct development of a policy to implement the IPV reunification principles. This policy framework prioritizes victim survivor safety and autonomy while ensuring that reunification efforts are handled with care, consistency, and alignment across all supervision delivery systems. These principles create a standardized victim-centered approach that maintains public safety while addressing the unique needs of survivors and families. So really what we did is we took those IPV principles and then tried to put them into policy that we felt provided uniformity statewide when working with victims. So a couple of the things that I'll just highlight here is that the policy values should address victim-driven and victim-centered approaches, that case managers and supervising agents actively initiate and develop ongoing collaborative working relationships with community-based domestic violence advocates in their area, that there needs to be flexibility based on individual victim needs, and flexibility depending on the client level of risk and threat of reoffending. So I think all of you have a copy of the prints or the draft policy. Okay, perfect. Thanks. Do you want me to read through this? Do you want me just to go through the sections and see if there's any feedback or questions? What's the best way to review it?
It might be good if you just sort of walk through it quickly with like high level overview of what the different parts are and what they do.
Okay.
And then we could open it up for feedback on the whole thing.
Perfect.
At the end, if that works.
Perfect. So, you know, the introduction is purpose is to promote safety and establish consistent victim-centered reunification procedures for working with victims, at-risk persons, and clients with a history of intimate partner domestic violence. And one thing that I'll comment is that at-risk persons really was added in there because there might be defendants who are on supervision that maybe are in a relationship with a person that's not the victim, but they could be at risk. So really working with not only the victims, but also being aware of and addressing at-risk peoples who might be in the lives of our clients who have a history of domestic violence or intimate partner violence. In the applicability section, you know, we tried to, I think there's a goal to be uniform in this language in all policies. There's been some talk about, should it say CCA, CPO, DOC? And if I understand correctly, the universal language is Minnesota Community Supervision Agencies. But then it also talks, we also want to make sure, and I think this is a little bit lacking here, that we aren't addressing case managers in here. So that might be something, Liz. Do you remember why that wasn't included initially in this?
I think the decision was to bring it back here with just the supervision language and get some directions as to whether to broaden it. But I don't recall specifically.
Because I know the DOC has been training case managers and the goal was case managers for individuals who are leaving prison would also be subject to these policies. So that they're taking in victims' needs, at-risk needs, that they're making sure they're collaborating with area domestic advocates, etc.
Yeah, I mean that's true. The case managers are for those who are in facilities coming out are intricately involved in being trained in this policy as well. I think the question is whether CSAC, felt like that's language that you would put in here. Right. I think that's the question about whether that's something that, right. So should we add in case managers along with the community supervision agents? That's one of the questions.
And I apologize, I kind of missed that in this. We had it in some language and it's not in there now as I'm looking through it. So my personal opinion is yes, the language should include case managers because we can do it in the community, but we need to be consistent for those coming out also of the institutions. In my opinion, the DOC has been very supportive of that and been very proactive in doing the training and getting on board with this. So I think that was just kind of a miss. And I guess we could get some feedback from this committee. But I think the intention was when this first came out is it would apply to community supervision and case managers for transition to community supervision. And then going on talk to applies to working with clients being released. So it says right below that, a policy applies to staff working with clients who are being released from incarceration or currently under current supervision. And then talks about the cases that is involving. Any questions, comments, discussion regarding applicability? All
I
right.
guess I
I'll
would
keep-
just agree with
oh.
you that we would want that included in that definition as, you know, the case managers.
Thanks, Molly. Okay, I'll keep moving and interrupt me if you have questions or concerns. These are the definitions that we outlined. Again, I know, and I heard that the talk about, it'd really be nice to have a glossary of definitions so that when we are doing these policies that we're all consistent. So I don't know if any of these definitions lie somewhere else that we should cross-reference. But if anybody is aware of that, our committee sure would be willing to take back and review these definitions. All right, moving forward, talks about then the key components. Again, outlines just being victim-centered, a collaborative engagement, victim-driven, and risk-responsive and responsive planning. Then the guiding goes into the guiding principles. And again, providing victims, local advocacy agencies encouraged to consult and work together, require the client to participate in relevant programming based on risk, needs, and responsivity. And agent caseworkers also working with victims, talking about safety plans so that we are helping them and directing them to be safe. Procedures. And again, number one is all victim requests for reunification must be invested for appropriateness. So that's if the victim wants that, we need to explore it. Just because there's a court order or there's something out there, we should look into that. We should find out what the barriers are and what steps are there, and it outlines very clearly now below eligibility. So if there's orders, there's things out there, we can't implement it immediately, but it means you explore that and look at what other options are there for the victim. Then number 3 goes in determining appropriateness for reunification. 4, talking about increasing victim or at-risk person's safety in reunification. And then comes into training. And this is where I guess there's been a lot of discussion, and I guess I'm bringing it back to CSAC for some discussion on. One of the recommendations that we had is that within the first year of employment, supervising agents and DOC facility case managers must complete a standardized training on IPV reunification principles and victim-centered approach to corrections. And we've been doing that this year. But the question is, how do we keep that going every year? Will that be part of the state training academy? Is this going to be a video that's housed somewhere and each individual agency could have their staff watch it? And I will note that we are having 2 recorded sessions coming up. And so those could be hosted somewhere. So if new staff come up, but then we also know that changes will come up. As we need to, the steering committee will review these and make proposed changes. So how do we address that training statewide? And is there a commitment to add that to the state training academy or put that on each individual agency to identify? And then it was our recommendation that the reunification principles must be approved by the Domestic Violence Steering Committee, as we were the body that created this and brought them forward. And then Victim Violence Free Minnesota was kind of our driving agency of bringing the victims and everyone at the table. The word "or" got put in there, and that is up for discussion too. Quite frankly, I think it should come back to the whole steering committee, not just Violence Free Minnesota, so that we're all components at the table are are in alignment with the potential changes. Anybody, Tim, or did I lose Liz? Oh, there she is. Do either of you have any comments about what we've reviewed or anything specific to training?
No, I would echo what you said, Tracy. It generated a lot of discussion because as we move into probation reform, I think there's a lot of required training that's possibly going to be recommended in the first year of employment for staff. So I think that's an important piece of, is this a part of Agent Academy? Is this something that can be watched on video? Or is this an in-person type of training that we want all of our newer staff in their first year of employment to go through?
I will, okay, go ahead, Liz, thanks.
And just speaking to the second point, I think the or got put in there partly, I think everyone's preference is it goes back to the Domestic Violence Steering Committee, if this is put in there for approval. I do think that the Domestic Violence Steering Committee isn't a formal group, right? So I think that there's some concern. I mean, it's been established, it's been running for the last 3 years, but, right. So I think that's what landed that language in there, because I'm not sure, I mean, we've all come to the table and agreed to be there, but I'm not sure what sort of dictates the existence of a domestic violence steering committee other than our will to be together, working together. So I think that was what led to this or language. But I think the preference is the domestic violence steering committee.
Becca Muscat is also on our committee. Becca, do you have anything that you want to add or comment on?
I'm not on the committee, but I am the victim sort of representative here. And yeah, I think when I was looking at that for me, the assumption was if the Domestic Violence Steering Committee ceased to exist, it's good to have a backup. And now realizing, yeah, that there is no formal mechanism for it to exist, that makes sense to me. But yeah, otherwise, I really like the policy.
Okay, and then there was a question that came back, and I think I know the answer to this, but on the last, one of the questions that came up from Violence Free Minnesota is, who is the owner of the policy? And I said, my understanding is it'd be a DOC policy that would have support of MACAC and CPO, but I think it lies in DOC. And then there was a question, does it have to go under a certain like victim services or restoration unit that Liz runs, or do we need any language relating to where the policy lies? So
I don't think so. I think I might have mentioned DOC is creating a new section within its policy manual for all the policies that CSAC brings forward. We will assign somebody within DOC because we do review policies on a regular basis. So there will be somebody assigned to be the lead to get the notice, trigger the notice to like, hey, it's time to review this policy. So then they can sort of start making sure that if any changes need to happen, that can be reviewed by the appropriate folks. So I think that will dovetail with the way we normally, I think they would just bring it back to the domestic violence steering committee.
Okay. So I think we had some discussion about that as who kind of, that can be removed if it's on an automatic process through the DOC.
Yeah.
So I think my understanding is, today we're bringing this forward for review, to get any feedback from any of you on things that we missed, things that are there's concerns on anything that's included in there. And then I believe the next step is that then it goes back to the organizations to review, correct? It would then come back here it would go back to the steering committee to vet any concerns that come back from those agencies. And then we would submit a new proposal for action at a future meeting.
Correct. I think that is where we're at. Well, we're at the discussion point right now. And I really appreciate this. This is wonderful work. It's important work and illustrates again those guiding principles that have been discussed and approved as well. So I would open it up for anybody to give feedback and comment to the presentation and the policy.
Just a minor wordsmithing
Yeah.
in the at-risk person definition, the second sentence, for consideration, where it reads, an at-risk person is not a victim of a client, but someone, and instead of the current language, it would be, but someone where strong evidence exists to believe.
Thank you.
Might read a little clearer.
Very good. Thank you. So the big focus here is really is getting our people who are working with victims, looking at a victim-centered approach. So several agencies statewide, no matter if you had a domestic violence caseload or not, sent agents to this training just saying, if you're working with any victims, this training is really good. It really takes a look at seeing the victim's perspective and making sure that is part of and integral in any planning or any supervision you do with those offenders and working with the victims. So I think to me, it was phenomenal training. I think it was a phenomenal endeavor that we've got advocates at the table and helped us develop this and work together in collaboration of how we work together in our communities and how we make these victims safer, and that we also incorporate all of this in everything that we do with the offenders that we work with so that we keep victims, at-risk people, or our community safe. So the other question I had, I guess I'll bring to you, Kelly, is how does it get determined that this will be a state training academy training or not? I mean, is this something I go back to Kelly Wheeler and say, hey, is this something we can incorporate, or what's that process?
I'm not involved in the statewide training academy, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think that it is a matter of just going to the committee that establishes the agenda and works through that request that this be one of the items that's included.
Okay.
In SBA.
What I will do is I'll make contact with Kelly Wheeler in the meantime, and see what that process is or what that committee's position is on it, and be prepared to address that when we bring this back.
That's good.
Tim or Liz, did I forget anything?
Could I ask a clarifying question just as well in the definition under the high threat client? And it's indicating that and or at least one incident of highly lethal violence against a romantic or sexual partner, and it gives some examples there. Is that based on if that was the conviction for that person being supervised, or a lot of times we see those allegations in court, but perhaps there's not that conviction for that, and so what is to be considered there?
Is it an incident or allegation, or is it a conviction? That's a good question, and I'll bring that back to our committee too. Tim or Liz, can you speak to that?
Well, I think that one of the principles that underlies this is that we're really trying to look more holistically at the clients, the victim, right? So that it's not necessarily here's the committing offense, and if something else happened outside of that, it's not really the purview. We're trying to broaden that to really take this view like, is this person really a risk? And that may be built off of a conviction, or it may be built off of something that happened, but isn't the committing offense or the reason they're under supervision, right? So I think that that's really the intention behind this, is to really look holistically at the person on supervision, and to look not just at, because for example, we know that there are folks who may end up on your caseload whose their conviction is a drug offense, but that they have all these underlying domestic violence behaviors, right? So really looking at the range of those behaviors to really determine risk and safety. So it's the much broader view of it.
Does that help?
Your question?
Okay. Do you propose language change because of that? Is it clear without us rewording it?
I appreciate the broadness of it. I guess if that's the understanding of the policy, I appreciate that. That would be a a recommendation, I guess, from myself, as long as the group feels that that can be incorporated that way based on the language.
Okay. We'll bring that for review and discussion, and if there's a way we feel we could tweak the language a little bit to make it clearer, we may bring that back.
I have like a technical thing. I'm gonna looking at you, Liz. The first couple of sections on here, the key components and the guiding principles for unification are like they're more guidance than policy. So what I'm just sort of wondering structurally is how they fit in. And so my ask of you, Liz, would be to connect with Amy Lauricella just to have her take a look at it and give some recommendations about, is that the right structure, or is there a different way that they should be incorporated? Just, I think they're important things to have in there. Policy structure wise, it's a little different than we normally have. So,
yep.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
May I ask just a question?
Absolutely.
Clarifying 2 questions. And I think it's to help me better understand the intent of the policy, but like under procedures, number 3, B, where it says agents may, consider a step down approach that gradually increases contact over time as appropriate. Can you just explain that a bit more? Like, where is that? I read that, as I look above, and if there is a no contact, they're not eligible for this. Okay, if there isn't a no contact, then I read it to be who's imposing it. It seems to imply some sort of no contact with like a step down approach. So can you just like kind of educate me better on?
So I think, Liz, did you want to go?
Well, I was just going to jump in and start and say, I mean, we know that those releasing from facility, a standard condition of release is no contact with victims, right? So there may be no other prohibition on contact other than that standard condition of release, right? And it's no contact except at the discretion of the agent, right? That's the language. And so those are the cases, because if there's a no contact order in play, they're not eligible, right? That's one of the hard lines. So then the question is, how do you start? And that's what the guidance is really about, how to start thinking about, that it's not just all or nothing, that, that when you look at someone and you see risks, right, that is there a way to look at contact that might be okay? Like we'll authorize, phone and email contact. We aren't going to permit you to live here, right? I mean, it's that contact exists along a continuum. And so it's really in those kind of situations saying, let's see what things like, does this person first need to complete some sort of or treatment before I'm comfortable with the person living here, but will allow contact in some context. So that's where the step down approach comes into the guidance materials. And it's really talking about, it's addressing that no contact with victim except at the discretion of the agent, right? So trying to give an approach, right, where there's this balance between, looking at risks and trying to balance that out.
Does that answer your question?
An important addition to that is, as well as looking at it does talk about, those discretionary areas with the agents looking at recent behaviors, some of the history. And just because contact is approved and it's there and there's no contact orders present, in consultation with the victim might have specific requests of, yeah, things are much better, but I'm not ready for full contact, kind of like Liz said. And starting slow, it gives the agent some guidance on starting slow with that contact. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Did you have a second one?
No, I think it wrapped itself up in the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
Yeah. I have one, I guess I think a technical thing as well. Appreciate the comment about like, if we're asking this to be in the first year as well as many other things, could it be in the academy? I know that there's a request that will be coming from MACAC from our diversity and inclusion and belonging subgroup around some and I know that we actually are going to talk about that with the next presentation as well. My point in saying all of this is I think there's going to be several things that are going to be a request of the academy. And I'm wondering if we do that, all together, and especially we need to get this policy approved that I'm assuming this will eventually pass, no doubt. But, so we're doing this more in a cohesive way instead of just kind of a popcorn effect. And I'm just kind of wondering if that's a good way about it versus each committee reaching out at different times, but just a thought. And actually, I think we have Bridget here in the attendees, but
I can elevate her to, I can elevate her up if you'd like.
Sure. She may not like, but let's see if she has.
Sorry, Bridget. I was just, yeah. Method of the madness here.
I always like being able to talk. Stop it.
Hi, Bridget.
Molly, you were probably just completely reading my mind just on the number of requests, and not just from MACAC and this policy, but several others too. So, I mean, STA could become a year-long endeavor with the amount of training that I think is being requested to add into it. So I would much appreciate, and there's a steering committee that this would be brought before, but and that actually meets next week. So I can at least start to plant some seeds on what the future of STA will look like in maybe calendar year 26, 27. But I would absolutely appreciate like a more, what are all of the things once approved, all of the things that we will need to consider, because it's not just embedding training into a calendar, but finding trainers, and right, just trying to figure out holistically what this can look like from a good training perspective too, because jamming a million trainings into new agents and case managers, we really got to think holistically on how best people learn things and can practice the skills that they're learning then, and without and retaining, right? I mean, that's ultimately what we want to see happen out of all of the training. So you are reading my mind. I appreciate it.
I try. I've worked in your world, and I think that's an important piece that everybody knows too. Is I mean, there's research on how much you can retain, and when you're sitting in really dense, especially 2 weeks, especially something as important as this particular. Well, they're all important, but we want people to really be able to fully take in that information and not just be so overwhelmed with everything going on. So for future conversation, but just wanted to throw that out there as these come up.
And I will also bring that back to our committee, is that we do have some trainers that have been doing the training. And is that something that we maybe as the Domestic Violence Steering Committee can offer trainings twice a year and maybe post those and plan for those, whatnot, so that we could, continue to provide that. It's nice, the training itself is provided, also has advocates as part of the training. So, if it went to something like State Training Academy, I would suggest, or I would encourage that our trainers be the ones doing that training, not rely on who DOC to do the training, but maybe that's a venue for it, but then we provide the trainers. So I think we'll have I can bring back some further discussion on that also.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. I would just mention too, there are a few counties across the state that do their own in-house training for all of our statewide training academy curricula. So just keep that in mind too. It wouldn't just be something that would need to be offered at STA, but also that, the Hennepins of the world, Olmsted, I believe, does their own training. There are just a handful of counties that have their own in-house academies, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
These are the implementation questions that are going to continue to be really important as we, move through these policies, no doubt. So right now we are at the, go ahead, Kelly.
Kevin has his hand up.
Yeah. Oh, I can't see that. Okay, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there have been several so CY Training Academy folks, like Bridget was at the last meeting, MACAC folks, so CCA, MACPO, CPO, DOC have started, August was our first meeting to discuss statewide trainings, conferences, how we support each other, how we can collaborate with one another and going forward. And so like, you know, your Hennepin Ramsey counties, for example, don't necessarily send any of their staff to statewide training academy, but they do in-house. So like, how do we open that up to other agencies that maybe can go there and that we're getting the same trainings? And so they're all part of the conversation. So we're having there's a lot of collaboration. And so like this, I think would be a good fit as well. When we're talking about collaboration and trainings, that it doesn't necessarily have to be housed at Statewide Training Academy because some agencies don't send their staff to it. So just having those conversations that are happening and just putting that out there.
I just
Yeah,
make
thanks,
one
Kevin.
last comment as well.
Yes, go ahead.
We got this email yesterday with the attachment on this deliverable 5. And so I was just kind of thinking when I looked at this policy, if maybe some language could be included, or just for a discussion point as well when you bring it back to the community, just about the gender responsive, culturally appropriate and trauma informed services, that language being incorporated as well into the policy when for this domestic violence piece. Very well.
Yeah, I like that. So again, we're using those principles and those concepts in the other one, and we're mirroring language so that we make sure that we're consistently, you know, embedding these ideas into all of our policies, really.
Very good. I'll bring that back to our committee. Thank you. Good idea.
Molly, not to overstep, but I feel like I'm hearing a couple of potentially larger changes to the policy that could happen. Like it's not fundamentally going to change, but it seems like a lot of language might change. I wonder if this is just bring it back to show us the updates and then we send it back to our.
Perfect. That's totally fine. I know the only thing I have a question on is the timelines, because I think that our CSAC timelines were August. We wanted to get something before the committee to be in compliance with timelines. So if you direct us to bring it back for the next meeting for discussion, we're not opposed to that at all, as long as we know the timelines are going to change a bit.
Well, and our next scheduled meeting is until the first week in October now.
Okay. You read my mind too, Kelly. I think that that's exactly the right route, is that we need that work, because it could be substantially changed. And then we're not doing this to our organizations all the way back and then have to do it one more time. So as close as we can get anyway, I think is a good option. So I'm hearing that the request then would be to bring it back to the October CSAC, Tim. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we could put this on the agenda for the steering the first week in October when we meet, if that's okay with this committee.
Yeah, I think that works.
And then bring it back in October then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Any other comments or suggestions on that from folks? Well, thank you. Thank you for the work, the presentation, and look forward to hearing from you again in October. All right, then we are moving on to the gender responsive, culturally appropriate policy review. And who do we have up for that one? Who's taking the lead?
Kevin.
Kevin, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So I was not planning to present this. So the evidence-based practices statewide advisory committee was tasked with deliverable 5 and deliverable 8. We just at the beginning of the meeting we discussed deliverable 8. And so with the large EBP group, we split those up into subcommittees. And so Jake took the lead of this deliverable 5. and he presented it to a large EBP group in August. And so we just got to see it for the first time, or I just got to see it for the first time in August, of like kind of some updates and the draft that we're seeing now of what that looks like. I know Amber's a part of it, and others as well, as you can see listed on the membership. So some, and it's not in, it's not in the policy form yet. And so I would say this is kind of a very draft form, because it's not, we don't even have it in the policy form. So I can, if Don, if you want to scroll down a little bit, please. And so I don't know if you just want to give me, if you want me to just do an overview, because I'll just say, when it was presented at the large EBP group, some of the feedback was, some of it should be go into policy and laid out, and some of it, kind of like in other recommendations, could be part of the implementation plan and like how to get there, sort of thing, sort of, and so not necessarily be in the policy. So there's a lot of detail in this document, and some recommendations and kind of rationale behind it, but it doesn't really flow into the policy. So if you want me to kind of go through it, I can. Otherwise, our plan is to meet, I believe, early September, and make updates and put it in policy draft form for the next CSAC meeting in September. But I can just say, like, in general, the research has shown, the evidence-based practices has shown how gender, trauma, and cultural impacts how people do on probation, how they enter into the criminal justice system, and what supervision may look like, and best practices to address those needs. And from the last response from the Commissioner of Corrections, he recognized trauma is a big part of supervision, probation, that we should be aware of trauma in all aspects. So that is a focus. So if you want me to kind of go through this, I can. Otherwise, it's probably going to look a lot different when I come back in September and present.
Well, thank you, Kevin, because I think that was like, it's almost as maybe parallel to the QA, where you had the supplemental documentation, and seeing this as supplemental documentation as you describe it, versus how does it translate then into that policy for review. I would open it up to other folks, like if you had a chance to read this, to review it, comments or questions you might have for Kevin. I think it's a good document. It has great resources and information in it.
Kevin, would you want to just really quickly give us the highlights of, what sorts of things is the group sort of landing on as the items that maybe should end up in policy versus the items that shouldn't end up as part of implementation? That was a really good distinction that you just made.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Don, if you could scroll down to, let's see, number 1, the recommendations. So it says recommendations, ethics and boundaries training, and so you might think like, well, ethics and that's not trauma informed, that's not cultural appropriate, that's not gender responsive. So the ethics and boundaries training is that's the outline where you would have let's see, so the last line, so to enhance rehabilitation outcomes and ensure equitable supervision, we recommend integrating mandatory boundaries and ethics training with an emphasis on gender, culture, and trauma informed care. So that's where that piece kind of falls into that ethics and boundary training. And the benefits of it, if you want to scroll down a little bit more. So recommended steps, require ethics and boundary training into all staff onboarding by July 2026. Annual ethics and boundary training into each agency training plan. Ensure curriculum is informed by experts in trauma-informed and gender-responsive care. And so that's where, like, more of it's tied into that. Incorporate real world case studies and scenarios based exercises for hands-on learning. Report training plan through each agency comprehensive plan. So that's how the quality assurance, and I don't want to skip around too much, but that was one of the discussions we at the large EBP group that we had was, could this document or policy actually move into deliverable 8, the training, coaching, and quality assurance policy, similar to case planning? Does it necessarily have to have its own, or should it be tied into that? So that was one question the EBP group had for CSAC was, how do you see this fitting into deliverable 8, the training, coaching, and quality assurance policy? And I can save that for the end. And then Don, if you want to scroll down a little bit more. And number 2, focus responsivity training to ensure staff, agents engagement with clients. We propose integrating focus responsivity training into staff onboarding. The specialized approach will equip agents with the skills to tailor interventions based on risk, needs, and strengths, ensuring equitable supervision. And I should mention that there's like discussion of, like, we say staff, we say agents, and this would be another question for the group. Do we want it to have staff that have direct client contact? Some agencies do provide training on trauma, cultural, gender responsive for support staff that deal with, take phone calls from clients, meet them at the front window, have those interactions. So if a client is maybe acting strange or having I'll just say mental health crisis in the lobby, they're somewhat trained to what to do or how to do that. Or you even being cultural aware of if somebody's doing something, maybe it's not normal to them, but it's normal in their culture. And so just having kind of all staff that have client contact be trained in these as well, not just agents. And so that's another question for CSAC of, should it just be agents, or should it be all staff that have contact with clients or just involved individuals? Why responsive training matters, and this is the rationale behind it. Recognize trauma histories, shaping supervision strategies accordingly. Supports gender and culture responsiveness, ensuring interventions respond to personal backgrounds, and adapts to learning styles and communication needs, improving engagement and compliance. Recommended steps, and this is where kind of some of these things might fall back on the EBP advisory committee. Develop a statewide training course focused on client supervision specific to gender, trauma, and culture by January 2027. So the other question is maybe not relying on statewide training academy to develop this, but maybe it goes to the EBP statewide advisory committee, and then it's with input from statewide training academy and other agencies that do their own in-house training. So we're all receiving the same type of training. Incorporate an agency onboarding of new agent staff, such as statewide training academy. Existing staff receive training and annual thereafter. Agencies are encouraged to implement research-based risk and needs assessments tailored to specialized populations. Excuse me. And so, for example, you have the WARNA for female clients, right? What does that look like? And assessments that don't show bias in other cultures. And so I know we're doing the risk needs assessment validation study for the LCMI, which should be incorporating all cultures in Minnesota, as we have a diverse culture in Minnesota. So that would be great to see. So I think that would be very helpful. So 1 and 2 were kind of the high points, and then 3 as well. Integrate more comprehensive skill practices with evidence-based practices. Responsivity training complements existing EBP model. So we're already doing, so how do we tie in gender responsiveness, cultural appropriateness, trauma-informed care when we're doing risk needs assessment tools, motivational interviewing, how does that tie in? Cognitive behavior interventions, case planning. And I just heard like the domestic intervention as well, like tying those key components into these other policies and responsivity factors when we're using these EBP skills. So looking at those, so the 1, 2, and 3 are the I would say the key focus ones. Best practices, if you scroll down further, would be like, how do you get the right staff in your office? And this kind of stems from APPA, who came out with a study last year that says, you know, you want your staff to be reflective of the community that you work in, and that you want them to be the best for your clients. And so like hiring practices, maybe what some, framing certain interview questions, and what they may look like. So those I think would be more in the implementation guide. I mean, maybe we'll all get there down the road, but we don't want that to be a barrier of like this policy not going through, because we know all agencies have different hiring practices. Sometimes HR is in charge of questions being asked or what their practice is on that. And so, like I said, some of these things more focused into implementation guide of like how you can get there if you want to do best practices, what the research is showing, how you can have the best agency as possible. So I guess I'll stop there. And Amber, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
Nothing to add. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Well, yeah, appreciate the overview. So I open it up again for others, comments, questions, discussion.
Well, I'll just say I really appreciate how far this work has come. I think that you've done a lot of work. The group has done a lot of work and has really started to push into where we asked the group to go a couple of months ago. So thanks for that effort. I'm also kind of wondering, timeline for you, what do you think is reasonable? Because it sounds like there's still some work to do here to kind of ferret out, like what's policy, what's implementation, where does each thing really land? So I'm wondering what sort of a timeline you think you might need going forward.
That is an excellent question. I know, so I do want to have a draft form for this group for next month. And like I said, it's going to be a draft form. So September, October, November. I would say November. I would like to take action. I don't know if that's realistic, but I would like November, at least by the end of the year, to have this completed by. And I think we can, if we're looking at it high level, base level, all agencies are able to do it or support it. And then with that, having an implementation guide, not it won't be attached to the policy, but separate, similar to the deliverable 8. I think that's feasible.
Okay. Yeah, I think that as I was listening, and I also echo the appreciation for the equality, document and effort that went into this. It's really great. There's some things in there, as you had walked through and mentioned, it would be part of implementation. I mean, even some of the trainings that need to be developed, right? We can't put in policy something that doesn't exist yet, right? So I think those it's a evolution, right? We're going to be doing this, and as things come up, then we can revisit it in CSAC. Okay, now we actually have the, curriculum. Do we want to add that to the policy, things like that? So where do we want to start, right, with what we have and what you have there, and moving that along? It also makes sense to me that this one would maybe come after that risk assessment, because as you think about some of those that you just mentioned, like the WRNA, like they're already grappling with that on the other side of, figuring out what they're going to put in the risk assessment policy for the trailer assessments. And so maybe this flows well after those things are figured out as well. So I was just looking at our calendar though. So, because we have the holidays in there, we still have the November one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, just making sure. Looking at so that would be on the 26th. It's day before Thanksgiving.
Seriously.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked about that per se, but well, and then the next one would be Christmas Eve.
We're dedicated.
Might not work.
Right, exactly. So I mean, I don't want to to me, it makes sense that you need some time to do this, to do it well. I don't know how you want to work that by the end of the year. I mean, do you just want to have figure out which meeting we're going to do it at, or what do you want to do, Kelly?
Well, okay, so number one, I think on the November and December dates, I'm going to ask Dawn to look for room availability, and we'll come back next month with proposed alternative dates, and then we can all see what works. How's that sound on that front? But then I think our goal would be to try to have meetings each of those months, even if they move. So would Kevin, what do you think is more realistic? Would you rather take a couple months and come back in November, or do you want to shoot for October? Which one of those sounds better to you?
I'm assuming once we present, there'll probably be some feedback. So and I know we have some other deliverables that we're going to be discussing as well. So I don't want to load up those agendas. Maybe, well, if everybody's open to this, maybe present in November, but once we have the rough draft form, we can send it out to the group, and if there's feedback during those times, or I don't know.
Because of the public meeting laws and the way they apply to the group, we can't really work that way, but we definitely can put you on an agenda, give you feedback at the meeting, so that you can go back and work it in. We can definitely do it that way.
Okay.
Sounds great. So we'll say November.
Yeah, November. Yes, please.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, I think you're back to you, Kelly.
All right. It's exciting. I'm just gonna editorialize that it's exciting to see all this stuff coming together. I'm really, really 2 years ago when we started this, I didn't know how we were gonna get through it, and I think it's all working. All right, so next thing on our agenda is just doing a deliverables review. So for this one, Don is going to pull up the work plan document, and he's going to walk through any place that where we got any feedback that we didn't already discuss today as part of the updates.
All right, I think everyone can see the mapping document. Our ISR policy has been approved, and we are good there. We did receive the draft policy for IPV. Let's see if I can, there we go. Anybody from JRI, do you have any? We've got a look that the committee is in the process of reusing APPA supervision standards and is drafting an outline in the coming months. Any additional thing from anyone from JRI? Hearing nothing. And then regarding the development of a proposed prioritization timeline for a full set of supervision standards. The committee is going to prioritize based on impact level and change needed resources available. Looking at the risk and needs group, the LSCMI validation study is pending. And we did talk about the development of the use of a pre-screener. And this is also in pre-screeners. Continue to consider to make recommendations for supplemental assessments. Excuse me, had a presentation regarding sex-specific assessment tools. And next month they'll have a presentation on IPV assessment tools as well. Molly, do you have anything more on that from the risk and needs?
Sorry. No, I think that they will be reviewing policy next month, and then so it won't probably come until, what is it then, October.
October, okay. Looking at, this is still in deliverable 2. Sorry. MinStar 3 is now in use. A policy will be reviewed by the executive team. Was that reviewed, Kelly? Is it the update they gave me was it was going to be reviewed. Oh, sorry, 9.2. So I'm jumping ahead. So it's looking like that policy is going to be reviewed next week. Looking there.
Okay. Sorry, I can't see it. So can
Here.
Okay. Study and make recommendations for the formal integration of
So
the MinStar 3.
I think that all they're commenting on is that the MinStar 3.0 policy is being updated, but that doesn't relate back to then how do you integrate that into supervised release. So that work would still need to be done by that group.
Okay.
So we just have a policy that governs the use of risk assessment in DOC, and that's what that's referring to. That's all. So that policy is coming before our exec council next week.
Looking ahead, providing additional recommendations for supervision standards. That's going to be included in the full supervision standards recommendation, which they are estimating will be completed in December. And then moving on to deliverable 3, case planning. We did talk about the case planning, so we move on from there. Prioritize development of metrics to assess fidelity and outcomes. Let's see, sorry, I have a screen that is in my way. There we go. That works. CSTS enhancements are on hold as there are other prioritized enhancements. Document related to the subgroup will be included. And then, there we go. And the progress report within a year, that's been partially included in the policy. And moving on to deliverable 5, we did have a discussion on that one. And this is also included in that discussion that we've had. Deliverable 6, looking at a comprehensive grid. We did talk about that, is the behavioral response grid. And then into deliverable 8, which is the coaching and standards. We did discuss that. And requiring an agency develop a policy to require all agencies to ensure applicable staff complete initial training. That's questions regarding possibly adding additional deliverables to this policy. Kevin, do you have anything more on that?
I think just as policies come through, such as like deliverable 5, gender, cultural, and trauma informed, like do we add that to these to this policy? Same like the behavior response grid, that language, like are we tying that into, because we already have case planning? So just kind of like as more deliverables policies come in, where do we see them falling into place? Should it be under that training, coaching, QA policy as well?
I think it's a really valid question that Kevin and the group that he's representing have raised. I mean, some of their recommendations are around training. And we did just approve a training policy today. So I do wonder if some of those things should be added to the training policy so that it's all in one place. I'm curious what others on the group think.
I think that would be really helpful. I think we're seeing those training requirements everywhere, and to have that whole picture for all kinds of reasons would be helpful.
I agree.
Makes sense.
But at the same time, Molly, you also raised that there might be trainings that we're calling for that we don't have developed yet. So
Correct.
When is the time to add them to the policy might be the question that the committee should be grappling with too.
Right. I mean, I would stand by that. We wouldn't put things that are required that we don't have developed. I think we also have to go back to our respective organizations and really talk about capacity too, right? Like some of these things, again, there might be a request for academy, some might be in-house, but specialized trainings as an example, even larger organizations, we just don't know what people can even do or have the expertise to do, et cetera. So it is a little bit of, I think that's a good idea. And I don't know, like, do you just roll them in as it becomes a pretty solid, like, this is it, and this is how we're going to do it. And then we, are able to revise that policy, probably is what I think makes sense.
So we anticipated when we were asking this question that this policy was going to be like a living document. And so as things progressed, maybe they're not there yet. And like you said, we don't even know what the training is for those. But as the policies progress, we could always add them into policies like we typically do with other policies.
Yeah, what I would say is my recommendation would be that as the committee is sort of working through all of these things, if there are trainings that you're recommending that are currently available, but they're not required right now, right? If you're recommending any of those, that we try to get those incorporated into that training policy this year. But if not, then I think what you're writing is a recommendation to eventually have this type of training be required, and for what the steps would be to get it developed so that it can be incorporated in policy down the road. So basically, CSAC would be, agreeing with the recommendation, right? Like our goal at that point would be to say, yep, we think that is a good recommendation that we should try to implement statewide, right? Does that sound right to everybody?
Okay. I think so. Yeah.
Great.
And then the last piece we have on here is the workload study. And Jake unfortunately was our lead on this. There is a document that I'll be sending out after the meeting for everyone to review with some updates. However, he did give me a little bit of a spiel to say. The workload study is finalizing the agency survey. The overarching goal of the survey is twofold. One, to get a lay of the land in terms of practice across the state so that we can identify which counties are conducting supervision at a level that should be reflected or represented by the time study results, i.e. which counties should be prioritized to participate in the workload study to ensure the results will inform how much it costs to do supervisions at a desired level. And then two, to get a sense of the universe of different case types across the state so that we, in particular, Andrea and who's ever taking over for Jake, are prepared to go into the workload study design stage, understanding which discrete case types we will be studying and where we might need to consolidate based on similar work requirements. Like if some counties don't have specific practice standards for OWI cases, while others do, how are we going to reconcile these differences in a funding formula that is a one-size-fits-all? This will be helpful to know, particularly of those counties that aren't going to participate in the study, to make sure that, to the extent possible, the funding formula can be applied universally while not being overly complex and compromising functionality.
Sounds like they're doing some good work.
So, and those are the updates that we have on our deliverables.
All right. Any questions that we didn't get addressed along the way from committee members? All right. I think that's it for that one.
So I think we're moving into the other business then, number 7, which we do have an update on vacancies from Don.
Okay, as was already said, right now we have 4 vacancies in the committee. Jake, I have gotten a signed appointment letter from the commissioner for the DOC's new appointment. That'll be Carter Deers. So he should be joining us next month. And then we do have a judicial representative for Greater Minnesota that is still vacant. We have a behavioral health treatment or program provider who works directly with individuals on correctional status, which is the Commissioner of Corrections will appoint that. And that is still, the vacancy is still open. It needs to be open for 20 days. And I believe Labor Day, it will close. So, and we do have some applicants for that. And then we still have one of our Minnesota Indian Affairs Council representatives. I did talk to Wendy Spry, who is our liaison, and that was on the MIAC agenda that was supposed to meet this week. So I am hopeful that we will have a representative that is named and hopefully can join us either September or October.
Excellent.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, I am not sure if we have anyone present who would like to make comment, but now this would be the time on the agenda for any public comments.
If anyone who is in the attendee, all you have to do is just send a comment or send a chat and I will raise you up.
Can they chat?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
And I am not seeing anything.
Is there anyone in the room that wants to make any comments today? Okay, the answer is no. All right. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. Couple of things I just wanted to, before we close out for the day. I guess I should bring up one thing that I should have said in the other business. I'm very excited about the policy work that's coming forward. When I think about it, some of the core components of the policy work, the training policy, the risk assessment policy, which we haven't seen yet, the case planning policy, those are really building blocks to do good supervision. So we might, as a committee, want to think about recommending a uniform effective date for those things so that they kind of get put out as a package. That was just one consideration I wanted to raise. Food for thought today, not a decision point today, but you know, it'll take a little bit for all of this stuff to get through the formal process at DOC for making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and that everything's in the right format. So we have a little bit of time if we want to actually recommend a specific effective date for those things, and if we want to recommend that. I was just thinking it might not be a good thing to go to roll one out like every month. It might be better to take those first ones, roll them out together with a particular effective date. So food for thought maybe for next time. And open for comments if anyone has ideas there. We do our next meeting is going to be held at the Wilder Foundation. So September 24th, we didn't have this room available, but Wilder has graciously agreed to host us. Julia Tella is our research member, and she works at Wilder, so they were willing to host us for that meeting. So just remember that you're driving to a different place. I think in terms of next steps, it sounds like we have a couple of policies that are coming in on a little different timeline than we maybe originally thought, but it's all good. It's like it's all working in the right direction. So I'd say we just keep going with that. But I think the next couple of meetings through the end of the year are gonna always have these really complex discussions. So I appreciate the level of thought that everybody brought to the meeting today. Molly, do you have anything else that you wanted to cover before we close out today?
No, I would just say that I would appreciate that conversation where you're talking about how did if these core building block policies come out, with an effective date, looking at an effective date that allows, because everybody will be probably at a different place given whatever the ask is. And so I think those are wonderful next step conversations. And I would just echo, I appreciate everybody's work on all these subcommittees. I think it's great. So.
All right, unless there's any objection, I am going to close out the meeting. The meeting is adjourned and we'll see you in September. Thanks everyone.
Yeah.